Good morning. It's Lee Henson, president and founder of AgileDad, and it's time for today's episode of the Daily Stand-Up. Without any further ado, let's get started. Today's topic is an interesting one. Someone emailed and asked, should multiple Scrum teams share their meetings? In other words, should we go through and share certain meetings? They have a couple of people. So the example they give, they say we have two teams that are working on two completely different products. The products have some dependencies. They're two distinct individual products. Currently, they're working with one team of 9 people, but starting in February, they plan on breaking things out and being able to split into 2 independent teams. So they're trying to decide what meetings should be shared, if any, how those meetings should be, spread out, and what they should be doing. This is a good question. Oftentimes, we get people who they really do desire to have that collaborative effort across all the teams. But what winds up happening sometimes is the actual team members end up losing interest because the things that are being reported on, for example, the things that are being discussed may not be things that are relevant to them. So what we've learned is a good pattern or a good rule for this is to say the higher up the meeting on the totem pole, the more people that should be involved. The lower the meeting down the list, the fewer people that should be involved. And that typically holds true for most meetings. So let's give you a quick walkthrough, and we'll go through each of the meetings, and we'll just talk about each of the meetings and whether one or more teams should be involved and how you get the collaborative effort. So starting at the very top, we talk about the organizational vision and strategy. Now, this list that I'm giving to you comes straight from the Agile Meetings playbook that you can download on agiledad.com underneath the Downloads tab. This is the definitive guide to mastering all your Agile meetings. So for organizational vision and strategy, this doesn't require a team. This is one where after the leadership team has come up with the organizational vision and strategy, they can call in teams to an all-hands type meeting and let them know, hey, this is the direction we're going, this is what we're trying to do, this is where we're trying to go. And typically that's enough. So it doesn't require all the teams to be there. This might be the exception to the rule for the highest on the totem pole. Next, you have the product or service vision and strategy. Now, this one's important. This one, you want the product owner to collaborate with any analyst, business analyst, functional analyst, technical analyst, and you want them to come up with a vision and strategy that's in line with the organizational vision and strategy. But this is one that you also want to make sure that every team has an opportunity to validate. So when I say every team, that's every team that could potentially be working on the product. So if you have 8 teams and all of those teams could be working on a product, you would have each team present at the same time just to hear the vision and strategy, ask questions about it, and to make sure they're all aligned on the same page. There's nothing worse than going to work and feeling like the person next to you is there only to get the paycheck or because that's what they get paid to do. They're not really there to solve problems or understand what exactly is happening. Next comes the roadmap planning meeting. Now, during roadmap planning, the initial portion should be done by the group of product owners collectively with all the stakeholders and key stakeholders. However, you'll get to a point where you need to get ratification from the teams. The teams need to ratify the roadmap, make sure they approve, make sure they understand what's going on. So I think it's important for us to get to the point where we do involve the teams and we get the teams online and we say, hey, here's the roadmap, here's how everything's laid out. And it's neat to get their input because sometimes you realize through their technical input that they might know something that you don't know, that they might say, hey, it might be a lot easier if we pursue this route or if we do this first or second. I think sometimes we lose ourselves by not being inclusive of certain details. So I think it's just so important and critical for us to understand and get that ratifying approval from the teams at the conclusion of the roadmap. Obviously, they don't have to be there for the whole session. Usually, I'll invite the teams in for the last 10 to 15 minutes of the roadmap planning session. Release planning, release planning is a very special thing, but it should never happen until you have something that's called a backlog item creation workshop. Now, the backlog item creation workshop is an exclusive meeting that's for product owner, business analyst, functional analyst, technical analyst, and any key stakeholders. This is where they actually create the work that's going to be done. Now, I'm not looking for perfect here. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm just looking for some well-defined backlog items that are ready to be inserted into release planning. And once we get down to the release planning level, this is where things shift. This is where we want to have every team there. Any team that could be potentially working on a product or service should be involved in a release planning workshop. When you're doing rapid release planning, the more people that you have there to collaborate in a big room planning effort or in a PI planning effort, product increment planning effort, the better. You want to get those people together. You want to limit this meeting to about an hour in time, but you want to make sure you get everybody there and everybody involved. When it breaks down into backlog refinement, where you're getting ready to actually do the work, this is one team by themselves with the product owner for an hour a week. So this is each team gets their own session with the product owner. This is where you split things out, and this is where you tend to gain the most collaborative focus on which team is going to potentially pick up the work that's coming down the pipeline. So this is where you're going to start to see some real alignment. Then, of course, at sprint planning, it's one team at a time, where they should be planning for their updated increment for what they're going to do to achieve their sprint goal. Once again, important to focus on one team at a time here. I wouldn't share here. Now, the question came up, how do I know I have alignment after sprint planning? And this is where meetings like the Scrum of Scrums come up if you need one, if you're required to do that, if you have multiple teams where you want to make sure you got alignment. You can take a representative from each team and pull them together and make sure that you're taking care of things like dependencies or anything that's overarching that needs to be addressed. But that can be taken care of in a very short, informal meeting. After sprint planning, of course, you have the daily stand-up, and that, of course, is one team at a time. I never, ever recommend, and you never hear me say never, that's one of those words I hardly ever say, but I never recommend having more than one team trying to report in a daily stand-up meeting. You want to get this meeting as lean as possible. You want to make sure you get as much collaboration within the team as possible. And you want to make sure that you limit the scope of focus to the things that the team's working on and not to external things. This will help drive and keep the meeting centralized so that you don't have people falling away. Internal sprint review should be between the team and the product owner, demonstrating the work they did prior to the external demo. The external product demo, of course, or internal product demo, is where you actually show your wares once they've been validated that they meet the acceptance criteria and that they're ready for demo by the product owner. And then finally, you have the retrospective, and each team should have their own retrospective. Now, on occasion, I might call a multi-team retrospective just to get people together and make sure everybody's feeling good. But that is very rare and only on occasion. Typically, it's one team with one Scrum Master, with one product owner taking place in a retrospective. So I guess what I'm trying to say is every single meeting has a little bit different rules. And in order to best understand these, if I went a little too fast here, you can always go download that Agile Meetings playbook, and it shows you who all the mandatory participants are, who the optional participants are, and it'll give you a lot better idea. And it'll help you get that synchronized feel to what you're trying to do. The specific question also asked about demos. It says, could we do multiple teams in a demo? It depends on how long the demo is going to run. If you're showing every single feature and it's just going to take a long time, my answer is no. You don't want to kill people death by meeting. But if you could get all the things that were done into a 30 or 40-minute demo and still take questions, sure, why not? Get a couple of teams together. So as long as you have the same key stakeholder audience, you don't want to expand the audience to the point where they're not interested in half of what's being shown. So there you have it. That should cover all those different meetings, and I hope that information was useful to you. As always, we encourage you to visit us at AgileDad.com, where you can learn more about this topic and many others. And if you have a topic you want to hear on the Daily Stand-Up podcast, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at learnmore@AgileDad.com. Until next time, stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Do take care.